Interestingly, it was just 3 months before COVID happened. So the entire venture that I had planned, that I was very passionate about, again, it was in the campus space, which always has been very close to my heart, completely wiped out thanks to pandemic bringing people online. And overnight, that whole business model just crashed. And
I remember early 2000s when not most of the companies would have an exclusive HR function, to today where HR is probably one of the most powerful functions in the company. How would you like to share? How have you seen it?
Pre-pandemic, to some extent, I think HR was still in a very administrative mode. There was a lot of operational engagement required as far as HR is concerned. We were tasked with hiring people, making sure we stayed with the organization by creating some sort of excitement, engagement. That's what HR ended up doing for the most part, right? So the challenge before HR professionals now is how do you get people to really feel that they are working together as one unit, but at the same time making them feel that their individual needs are getting addressed. A lot of companies are doing is that they're dividing or removing the division between leaves, for example. So there is no sick leave or privilege leave or casual leave.
You have authored a book, HR in My Heart. What really inspired you to write that?
Full title is HR in My Heart, Leadership Lessons Like Never Before. So it's a very unique book. I've combined both prose text with poetry. So I happen to have a knack to write rhymes very easily. In a journey of 30, 40 years, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are working in the corporate world, I think the reality is that you've got to navigate the ups and downs. They will happen at some point.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all the viewers at whatever time you're watching this episode. Today we bring to you another episode of Empowering Souls with Rohit. Like always, we always bring somebody who's an eminent personality in the field that they are, impacting society very positively. So today I would like to invite Mr. Vikas Dua, who has actually been a veteran in the field of HR. He has over 20 years of experience across many large organizations. Currently, he is the head of Weber Shandwick. He's also a TEDx speaker. He's also authored a book called HR in My Heart. And he's also a podcaster. Vikas, thank you so much for joining us today. We are extremely delighted to have you over. If we could begin with you introducing yourself to the viewers.
Sure, Rohit, and a pleasure being here firstly. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an absolute honor. You said enough about me, and I think more than I deserve. But the fact is that, yes, I've tried to build my career in HR over the last 2 decades. Along the way, there have been some positives, some challenges that have come across the way. And today, the way I see myself is that I'm a HR professional. I'm a content creator in some form. I'm a father, a husband, a parent, and also part of the community which I'm driving on LinkedIn, which is built around my HR in My Heart brand umbrella. So that's where I stand today.
Oh, wonderful. That's a lot that you have on your plate. Multiple hats that you're wearing. It would be really interesting to understand if you could share a little of your journey, what inspired you to get into the human resources field and how the journey has transpired over the last 2 decades.
Oh, that's a long answer for that question. But to say it crisply, I think I call myself an accidental HR person. You'll be surprised to note that in school growing up, I was more inclined towards the sciences. I was a computer geek. Luckily, my school had computers when I was in the 9th standard, and I started going on Saturdays for extra classes to learn computing. I really enjoyed it. Somewhere along the way, I think engineering wasn't really going to happen because consciously knowing myself, I knew I wasn't IIT level, and I didn't want to put my parents to that challenge of capitation fees to get me into some decent institute. So I chose an alternate route, which was hotel management, inspired by my elder sister. Once I worked in the hospitality sector for about 4 years, I realized that that wasn't where I wanted to be long term. So I took a break to do an MBA. And interestingly, Rohit, you won't believe this, but in my MBA, I did my major in marketing and a minor in finance.
Wow.
And today I'm in HR, right?
Wow.
So that's how post the MBA, I actually got into a sort of quasi marketing / HR role. I got my big break with Wipro in the campus recruitment space, which some of those in the audience who are familiar with the world of recruitment will know that it's equal HR, equal marketing. As a company, you have to create a brand, you have to market yourself, you have to attract the top students. So it gave me a good insight or ability to utilize what I knew of marketing and also gradually get ingrained into HR. So that one start led me to another, you can say, path down the HR road. and that's continued then over the next 2 decades.
Oh, wonderful. That's quite an interesting story. You mentioned initially hotel management, and then in marketing and finance, you did your majors, and then eventually you got into human resources.
Yeah.
Of course, you've used a bit of marketing in all your, human resources activities as well.
Sure. I'll just add something if you don't
Sure,
mind. I'm
please.
sorry
Please go
to
ahead.
barge in like this, but on LinkedIn or on social media, when you look at people's profiles, and even if someone were to see mine, they probably think that, hey, this is the perfect profile and what a career chart and what a sorted life and career approach, right? But the fact is, it's been learning, it's been growing, it's been figuring out, it's been experimentation, it's been failing. All of that has happened, and I'm till today discovering myself. So post that, I worked in education space, I worked in IT BPO. Now I'm in the world of PR. So it's a complete, you can say, circuitous route that I've taken, and I've enjoyed lots of this journey along the way.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad you brought it up that a lot of times, youngsters especially, they feel they need to have an ideal career graph. But with what you're sharing, I think it's what's coming out and emerging is that there's nothing called an ideal career graph. It's discovering yourself at every stage, and as we evolve, as time goes by, we realize what is it that's really, we're finding interesting. So it's really, inspiring to hear your story. And I've personally witnessed, because I've known you for a couple of years and I've seen how you've grown. And as you have grown, you have positively been impacting a lot of people by virtue of the podcast that you're running, the book that you've written. We will come to your book a little while later. But before that, it'll be really nice for viewers to understand, being an HR professional and being a veteran in this field, what are some of the main significant challenges that you might have come across in your journey that you feel would be relevant for people to hear about, and how did you really overcome, surpass, or surmount those?
Great question, Rohit. I think the message I would want our audience to take firstly is that yes, challenges will definitely come across, especially when you're in a career that is going to span 20, 30, 40 years. So I'm glad you asked this. Speaking specifically about myself, I think there have been a few such pivotal moments in my career where such challenges have presented themselves. The first that I can recall is 2008, the Lehman Brothers crisis. I was in the IT BPO world at that point, and there was from the euphoric highs, suddenly everything was down to the bottom, and we didn't know how next year would look. We didn't know how the next 5 years would look. Everyone was kind of trying to remodel the business. And one critical part of that within the world of corporate India, of course, as you may also remember, was layoffs. Yeah. And suddenly, as a young upcoming manager, senior manager at that point that I was having to hear conversations about how some of my team may have to be let go. And I was proactively told to kind of identify people who should be in that list. And as a young manager who's graduated from college, B school a few years ago, still trying to ride the corporate India wave, it was a huge shock, and also not aligned to a DNA that I possess. So it was challenging. Of course, luckily for us at that point, being a solid company, being a company with very stable business pipelines, we were able to avoid such a scenario. But the entire process of actually getting ready for it also took a mental and, you can say, emotional toll on me as well. So it's not an easy journey for anyone. Right. And of course, now we've realized over the years that it's almost become an annual feature in a lot of industries, a lot of companies. So it's something that continues to cause pressure, not only because it doesn't happen in your company, it's also when you read it in the paper, sometimes you can feel that pressure. So right. That was one huge challenge. The second one, I think, would be a toxic environment that I happened to find myself in at one point in my career, and it took a whole lot of me. It sucked out a lot of energy, depleted my confidence, and I think that was the stage possibly that you and I first met as well. So I'm sure you would be able to relate a bit to that. But the reality is that when you're in that spot, it's difficult to understand and make sense of all the positive messages you get outside. Right. And it's easy to talk about it now in retrospect, right. But when you are in that toxic environment, when you are facing the brunt of it all, it's really difficult and to even acknowledge it. Forget about taking some positive action out of it to overcome it. So that was one piece. Of course, I was lucky enough to get the support of my family, my coach, and that helped me surmount or overcome that bit. And The last challenge I would say is the one where I tried an entrepreneurial stint at some point, and it was about 5.5 years ago now. And interestingly, it was just 3 months before COVID happened. So the entire venture that I had planned, that I was very passionate about, again, it was in the campus space, which always has been very close to my heart.
Right.
Got completely wiped out thanks to pandemic bringing people online, and overnight that whole business model just crashed, and I had to literally for 18 months try and flap my hands around in the water, so to speak, to try and resurrect it, to try and make something out of it. But it wasn't to be, and I cut my losses. I decided to get back into the corporate world, and luckily things worked out for me. Right place, right time. Got a great opportunity, which I'm absolutely loving. And so the story continues. Vikas Dua continues to try to do something new, learn, grow.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, because these are three incidents that you've mentioned are all quite pertinent. I think there's a message in every incident and a learning from every incident. It's 2008 you mentioned. I remember nobody can forget that time, because from sudden boom, there was a complete collapse internationally. And I remember I was also working with an Israel company that time at quite a senior position. And we had severe financial crunch post that. And a lot of our projects that we were doing kind of faced the brunt of it. And I'm sure a lot of people, so massive layoffs, which you mentioned. And I can understand the predicament you must have been if you were the one who had to really share this information with those people.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, it's livelihoods that we're talking about. The second incident that you talked about is being in a toxic environment. While this is a reality and it happens in a lot of, sadly, but it can, become a reality in a lot of places, companies. What would be that one message that you would like to share which helped you tide out of that situation, which probably, somebody else probably is facing difficulty could learn from that?
I think the single most important thing to do at such a point, Rohit, is to confide or to talk to someone you really trust, who you can get some advice from, who can be your anchor in that point in terms of helping you keep your head sane. You've got to try and figure out ways, avenues outside of that environment, obviously. The big challenge that I find is that, and it happens with a lot of mid-level executives, it happened with me also, we continue dragging that pain, we continue going through it because we've got obligations. We've got salary, we've got kids' education to pay for, you've got house EMIs to pay, you've got to maintain a certain level of standard of living. And all of this creates that unnatural, I would say, pressure on one to continue facing the pain while you know that it's not helping you, it's not doing anything great for you. But sometimes it's maybe good to just amputate and move on before the gangrene spreads and really kills you.
No, absolutely. Very well said. And I remember you mentioned a little while ago, you had a coach, and I am a leadership coach and a life coach myself. So I can really resonate with that. We will talk a little about coaching later in the conversation, but right now, the last part that you mentioned, the last incident that you mentioned, you tried an entrepreneurial venture. Sadly, the timing wasn't right because COVID just happened a few months after that. But the learning that I see from there, is that you were so resilient that you actually did not let it, a lot of times it's said that even if you have to fail fast.
Yes.
And I think the learning or the insight that I'm getting from your resurrection post that is that, life doesn't end or it doesn't stop anywhere. Even if there is a setback for whatever reasons, could be uncontrollable reasons beyond your control. But the point is you still go on and you look for other avenues and options. And that's what you did. So kudos to you for doing that. And I'm sure because of that decision, the organization that you are with currently and the organizations before that, there must have been a lot of value that you've created there. So somebody's loss has been somebody's gain here.
I hope so. But yes, entrepreneurship is a great learning ground, Rohit. Like you said, right from becoming an executive and having people to do your ticketing or getting admin or IT support to take care of your laptop issues, you suddenly become the office chaprasi upwards, right? So you're doing your cold calling to generate business, you're trying to figure out how to get a website up and running at a cost-effective price, and you can't go to the big brand names because they'll give you a quote which is running into a few lakhs. I'll be very transparent and even share with you that I worked out of home just so that I could save any co-working space expense, because even that is an expense which depletes your savings, which depletes the overall corpus you have. So you've got to think smart. Again, I was very blessed to have some very lovely people around me to support me at that point. A very close friend of mine offered me his office space to come and sit out of whenever I felt like it, which was not very far from this place. So you always find people to support you, to encourage you when you need them. That's what I've experienced, and I continue trying to do that in my own way. And coaching, I know you brought that up. I think a single most important factor at times like this, when you need to really break out into a new form and take your career in a different direction, I think a coach is someone you should definitely reach out to. No two questions about it.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, it just kind of revalidates the importance of a coach and how he or she could bring out the best in the person, under whatever given circumstances, the highest potential that the person has. And we all have that potential. It's just that we need somebody to nudge us in that direction to bring that up.
Yeah. The problem that happens, Rohit, is that when we finish our education, we get into our education, we get into a corporate world, and then corporate world has these L&D training teams, and we think that training is enough. साल में 3 बार वो आएगा, सेशन अटेंड करना होगा, we'll attend it. It may be an offsite, we'll get to enjoy also. We'll go back home and we'll be sorted for the next 3 years. Life doesn't work that way, unfortunately. That personal growth, that skill set, knowledge, attitude growth that is needed does need additional intervention. Now, where you get it from, you could say I'll get it from books, but unfortunately, if it were that easy, then all of us would be Elon Musk.
True.
So, idea is that you need someone more informed, educated, maybe even outside yourself, to be able to show you a mirror, to be able to guide you, to be able to generate some fresh thoughts in your mind to help you move forward.
Right.
So cricketers, actors, they all have coaches, diction coaches, bowling coaches. We all hear about them. When a Saif has a coach, or a Shah Rukh Khan has a coach, or Sachin Tendulkar uses a coach, we don't question it. But in corporate India and middle level executives, how many are going outside and spending money out of their pocket to engage the services of coach who can help them? They expect the company to do it for them.
No, I'm so happy and delighted, and it's very heartening to hear you speak about coaching in such a positive light, because you being an HR professional yourself, and it is a fact that of late in the last 5 to 7 years, there has been a significant boost in the acceptance of coaching within corporate scenario as well, of how it can uplift, upgrade, upskill, develop people. I'm also, another point that you mentioned, when you have, offsites or trainings, maybe they do serve a purpose, yes, but if there is not continued intervention post that, then probably somewhere the effect gets diluted.
Agree.
And that's where probably coaching comes in, which is also one-on-one connect, or maybe one-to, it could be a team coaching or a group coaching as well, but there is a regular connect. So that brings about a bit of a consistency, which has more lasting effects, so to say.
Of course.
But, over the last 20 years, there's a huge shift and transformation that's taken place, and evolution that's happened in the space of HR. I remember early 2000s when not most of the companies would have an exclusive HR function, to today where HR is probably one of the most powerful functions in the company. How would you like to share? How have you seen it shape up and change over the last 2 decades?
Sure. When it comes to HR, I think there's been a huge shift. A large part of it, in the Indian context at least, has been, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know what's the right word, due to COVID. The pre-pandemic, to some extent, I think HR was still in a very administrative mode. There was a lot of operational engagement required as far as HR is concerned. We were tasked with hiring people, making sure we stayed with the organization by creating some sort of excitement, engagement, providing the odd learning and development intervention. That's what HR ended up doing for the most part, right? But post the pandemic, what I've realized is suddenly the HR heads were on the CEO's fast dial list, because even the CEOs had no roadmap, no blue book to fall back on. So do you allow people to work from home? How do you manage their performance? When do you bring them back into the office? Everything was dependent on what the HR head was able to counsel or guide the CEO on. So suddenly HR was thrust into the forefront. Suddenly HR got a seat at the table. And at the same time, what also ended up happening was that suddenly HR also got the advantage of a lot of technology, which was earlier limited maybe or broadly used by either the finance folks who had all these fancy SAP modules and engines, and then you had marketing and sales teams who had all the Salesforce kind of platforms to enable themselves, and then HR tech came along the same time, at least in the India context, and suddenly now HR leaders, business leaders had people related information at their fingertips, which helped them make decisions, see what is happening, not only from the point of staff fulfillment, but also what is the staff mood like, what is the benefits emerging out of your learning programs. Literally everything from the hire to retire cycle was now suddenly available at the click of a mouse.
Right.
So when all of this collided post the pandemic, I think the HR functions really evolved to an extent where now we can actually say we are strategic partners to the business. We are actually using data to make decisions, and we're actually looking at employee well-being in a broader sense, not just whether they are happy for their 2 hours on a Friday evening. So that's the real shift. Now the biggest and complication that has now come into the play is, of course, this whole mix of how does the whole hybrid, remote working, multi-generational workforce work together. Making that happen is the other large problem that HR professionals are now trying to solve.
Right, right. No, it has really come a long way. And from what you've shared, of course, I think there's a lot of maturity that's come within the entire ecosystem. How do you see HR evolving further, maybe another next 10 years? And also specifically in the context of technology having taken over in most of the sectors and industries in such a big way, especially the role of AI and machine learning. How do you really see that impacting or, really blending in with the HR function?
Great question again. I think I'll be honest and say that I'm also still trying to figure it out. Every day is a learning experience for me in this field of HR. But I do know one thing that's going to happen, Rohit, and that's that we've got to somewhere look at personalization at scale. People today want that Mera wala pink. If you remember the good old ad
Yes.
from the earlier years. So today, just organizing a post office dinner on a Friday evening in a pub in Cyber Hub is not cutting it for everyone. It may do it for one or two or three, but everyone else wants to be treated in their own special way. Some people may just want to be left alone to go back home to their families. Some people may want to go to a movie. Some may want to go to a place where there's a stand-up comic show happening. So the challenge before HR professionals now is how do you get people to really feel that they are working together as one unit, but at the same time making them feel that their individual needs are getting addressed. Not an easy thing to solve, but I'm sure a lot of smart minds will crack it at some point in the near future, I'm hoping.
Right. No, thank you for sharing. And this is a real problem with what you've just said. But just curious to understand, is there a solution that the HR folks have been able to find with? And what stood out for me is, personalization at a mass level. So how does one really go about addressing this issue?
The simple baby steps that we've taken, for example, in a lot of companies like ours, is also that when you look at reward and recognition programs, rather than deciding that, hey, this is the iPhone that we're going to give you because you're the top performer of sales in the quarter. Today, reward-based platforms make it open for us or allow us to offer employees the ability or the choice of picking up whatever they want from a whole basket of items that are available. A simplistic example, but really that's the starting point.
Right.
The other big thing that a lot of companies are doing is that they're dividing or removing the division between leaves, for example. So there is no sick leave or privilege leave or casual leave. Today there's a basket of leaves. You choose it or you use your leaves the way you want to out of that bucket. So there is no hard restrictions on what you can or what you cannot do with respect to your leaves. Use it the way that gives you joy and fulfillment. So those are some of the things that we are kind of trying and experimenting.
No, these are great initiatives, I think, and they're a great starting point. And I'm sure it's a matter which can't be discussed in a short period of time, but great initiatives. I'd now like to shift the gear to a little bit of your personal journey and personally how you have really shaped up your own life. You have authored a book, HR in My Heart. So very curious, and I think viewers would also love to understand what really inspired you to write that, and what is the real concept and, in short, theme behind the book that you've written.
Sure. So, Rohit, the title of the book, the full title is HR in My Heart, Leadership Lessons Like Never Before.
Okay.
So, it's a very unique book. I've combined both prose, text with poetry. So, I happen to have a knack to write rhymes very easily. So, I combined the two. Again, an idea that was proposed or came through in a conversation with my coach, interestingly. So, something that began as a content sharing exercise on LinkedIn, which was in the form of these short poems that I was putting out, found themselves into this book. Now, why did I write the book? Again, taking it back to something you pointed out a short while ago. In my entrepreneurial stint, when for a period of about 18 months, when there was a lot of disruption and the platform that I was trying to launch itself became questionable, I had, to be honest, some time on my hands. And I could have easily watched a lot of Netflix. I could have easily just chilled out in my balcony looking at the stars. But I'm glad that I took out the time, or I used that time more productively. I put out a book. The idea was to share whatever learning I had, because truth be told, I made my fair share of mistakes. So this book is from real life incidents in my career till that date, which is of that previous 20 years. It carries a lot of positives experiences. It carries a lot of my painful experiences. But from each one of them, I've tried to find out, what did I learn? What did I grow? And I brought that into the book. The idea is to share it with people who can benefit out of it. The ideal audience in my mind would be young students or mid-career professionals. But I've been glad that it's received a lot of love from a lot of people, and continues to do so. It's also found its way into some top B school libraries like the Micah Institute.
Wonderful.
So I am hoping that somewhere some person is getting a little inspired by it.
No, wonderful. Thanks, Vikas. This is very inspiring because, this is a classic example of you turning a challenge into an opportunity. You mentioned that during that period when, you were going through that turbulent period when the platform, the company that you were forming was not doing well. You literally, and of course, you utilize that time. You could have idled away and probably just been a little unproductive and relaxed, but you chose to, go beyond your comfort zone, and you were like, okay, let me contribute in some way. And you put a book together, which I'm sure is impacting. And I haven't read it yet, honestly, but I'm very excited to read it. I will certainly read it and share my feedback also with you. To all the viewers, this is somebody who's lived it, been there, done that, seen that, and then written this book with all the lessons that he has learned along the journey. So if you want to really learn, there are two options. One is learn from your own mistakes. One is learn from others' mistakes. And you kind of expedite your journey of growth. So I would highly recommend, please go ahead and read the book. It's called HR in My Heart by Mr. Vikas Dua. It will certainly help you in shaping up your career in a better way. Coming back to what we were discussing, I would just again go a step forward. While you've shared about your book, you also are a TEDx speaker. How was that experience? How did that happen? And what is the theme that you'd like to that you shared in TEDx and that you'd like to share with the viewers here?
Sure, Rohit. So the TEDx experience, I think it was initially very nerve-wracking, but finally after it was over, very, very fulfilling. And I'll tell you why nerve-wracking, because those of the audience who are familiar with TEDx will know that it's delivered in a very different kind of environment. Now, I've been used to speaking on stages in the sense that I was part of the campus recruitment piece at Wipro. I was, in fact, heading that whole function for many years. So I was used to getting onto the stage and addressing large crowds. But the difference in the TEDx format is that you have this red circle on the stage. You can't move outside of it. You can't hold anything in your hands. And the audience or the entire auditorium is darkened out. So you're literally staring at darkness. And you're supposed to continuously talk a monologue, so to speak, for about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, that was something which I wasn't used to. I was used to talking on stage, moving up and down, going into the audience, moving my hands. And here, suddenly I was in the hot zone, so to speak. But yes, it took a lot of preparation. It took some guidance. Again, I come back to this from my coach, because very transformational experience there. And support from my wife, who sat through my multiple recitations of trying to fine tune my speech, and finally managed to pull it off. The TEDx also emerged, or the topic of the TEDx, which was about campus interviews, the stress and the solution, came out of my own personal experience. So, taking you back a little to my college days in hospitality school in the final year, as a 20-year-old, uh, sitting for campus placements, it was the most challenging junior year of my life, if I would say, because
Right.
it was highly nerve wracking. There was this pressure of placements. At that point, there were three top chains in India: the Oberoi Group, the ITC Group, and the Taj Group.
Right.
And out of all the hotel management institutes in the country, out of your entire batch of 100, people, the aspiration was to crack one of these. Now, at your campus, they would take about what, 3 to 4, 5, 10 people between themselves.
Right.
So, in spite of being one of the top performers academically, in spite of doing well in the school, I mucked up those interviews because I was just so nervous. I had put that pressure of getting selected so high on my mind that I just wasn't able to showcase myself. I was bumbling through interviews. And that kind of, in a sense, of course, in retrospect, we land where we need to. But at that point, I felt that I had messed up my entire career journey because I didn't get the right start. And later on in my career as a campus recruitment leader, again visiting a lot of campuses throughout the country, I realized that students were just taking so much pressure because it's the same situation was repeating. Unfortunately, in our country, we've got a population that continues to exceed the amount of jobs that are quality jobs that are available. So at every campus, I found these young kids sweating it out there, spending 9 hours waiting for their interview turn just so that they could get a good job. And my message through this TEDx talk was, don't take the stress, just try and be yourself, give it your best shot, you'll get where you need to do. So that's what brought about this TEDx talk.
Wonderful, because it's so true that a lot of times we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and that external extra pressure that is put on really does not serve any purpose. It becomes counterproductive to the cause for which we are, putting in that effort. So it's again a real life experience. You've actually genuinely impacted thousands of lives from across campuses, people who are trying to get great jobs, and otherwise in your career where you've dealt with so many people within different organizations that you've led senior leadership positions. What is one or two key learnings or lessons that you would like to share with all these young aspiring people who are probably heading out and starting their career, or they could be in the middle, they could be somewhere in mid-career age? What would be your key takeaways for those people?
The key takeaways for me, the first would be fair to others, be honest to yourself. The second would be open to change. And the third would be resilient.
Be honest, be open to change, and be resilient.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a journey of 30, 40 years, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are working in the corporate world, I think the reality is that you've got to navigate the ups and downs. They will happen at some point. I don't think anyone's graph continues to go up. In college, in school, when we start working, we get this organizational chart which shows you as a management trainee, assistant manager, senior manager, vice president. And we think that that's what life is. That's how the chart is. That's how the graph will move. It doesn't work like that. There are times you need to take a step back. There are times you have to go sideways. And no one tells you that. Even if you read it in a book, it doesn't hit you like that. But when you go through it is when you realize that, hey, that's what life is really about. So a combination of all of this somewhere helps you move and stay sane, move towards your goal. Because the fact is that if you're fair and honest to yourself and to others, you'll find those relationships, you'll find those people by your side when you need them. And I've personally experienced that. That's why I answered your question with that. So the relationships which I built during my earlier years in the corporate world before I took the plunge to entrepreneurship stood by me when I was trying to put that venture together. So the people I got on my board were leaders from the corporate world who I had worked with. Some who I had not even reported to. But I had a good working equation, a good mutual respect equation. And they said, the moment I called them, the immediate reaction was, sure, Vikas, we are on board. I wasn't able to pay them any money. I wasn't able to do anything for them. But just knowing that, hey, I have this one very accomplished leader on my board as a mentor, as a sounding board, as a face to showcase my prospective clients, was more than what I could ask for. And today, if I could do that for someone in some capacity, I'll be more than willing to do it, because someone backed me up when I needed.
Right. No, absolutely. In addition to what you just shared, what I'm really thinking is, when you say be fair and be honest to yourself and to others, one is, of course, you're building and fostering authentic relationships, which you just mentioned, which really came in handy and helped you at your time when you needed it most.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I see it in a different way as well, that when you're fair and honest to yourself, you're also questioning and trying to ignite that self-awareness within you, that am I doing the best that I'm supposed to do? Am I putting in the efforts that I'm required to do or that I'm capable to do? Am I utilizing the potential that I have within? So it kind of, in a way, when you say be fair and be honest with yourself and others, it kind of sets a certain ground. It lays a certain ground for the person to grow within and without, both ways. So I think that's really nice. To move forward now, I'd like to step into your journey as a podcaster. You also are running a successful podcast yourself, where you're inviting some eminent personalities yourself. How did that really happen? How did you get inspired to do that?
There was a very selfish reason for initiating this podcast, to be honest. The reason was,
I appreciate you really saying that openly, but would love to still hear that.
of course. So the fact is that, at this stage in my life, in my career journey, I'm just hungry for growing myself and learning more.
Right.
Getting these guests on my podcast is another opportunity for me to get an hour with them, to learn more from them and to pick up more. And but I also have another motive, which is really to share whatever I've learned or whoever I've been inspired by with my larger community. Today on LinkedIn, I've been blessed to have a very sizable set of people who are connected to me. And all of us somewhere, I've noticed, have a common thread of, growing ourselves or our careers, just trying to become better day after day. And when I bring on these guests on the show, the idea is that while I learn, people who are willing to learn also join in, also learn, because I happen to host this on a Sunday evening. Again, a time where people could be out enjoying, having fun, doing whatever gives them joy. Many of them choose to log in and listen in and watch the podcast live. And I think that's been very gratifying.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. So what stands out for me here is, of course, extending the learnings with the larger, ecosystem that you can, and also the seeker mindset within that. You mentioned that you still get to learn a lot from these people when you have interactions with them. So that's really nice. How would you, if we look at overall over 2 decades of experience, would you like to share a little in terms of some key learnings, apart, while you already mentioned that be fair, be honest, to these now specifically, I'm talking about viewers who are very young in age, who are yet have aspirations to make something of their career, probably still in campuses. What is that message, one message that you would want to share with them?
The single message, I think, Rohit, you actually hit upon it right at the start before we actually went live with this podcast, is how everyone's working together and collaborating. I think that's a big shift I've seen in the last 2 decades, from the time that we were in school and college to how the young minds today are working. I've also been lucky to be part of what is the LinkedIn Career Accelerator program of 2022. I was one of the 200 creators selected pan India, the first ever time they did that in India.
Okay.
And the composition of that group, of that LinkedIn Accelerator program, happened to be majority of young creators, early 20s, and people like me were few and far between. And once I was part of that group, and we continue to remain connected to this date on WhatsApp and even meet offline outside of the LinkedIn platform. What I've noticed is that this group really shares information with each other and collaborates in a very open and transparent manner. The idea, the mindset they are approaching their growth is with, I'll grow, but you also grow along with me, and let's grow together. And I can't help but think about my days in school and college, where all of us used to guard our textbook, our notebooks with great passion and under lock and key. And before exams, we would not even share it with anyone, because we had this mindset that, or at least I had, I would say, maybe let's not say we, that I have that edge, and that's the edge that is going to get me 2 3 marks more and keep me ahead of the rest. Today, when I see this group interacting, it's like if they are facing a problem, they'll just throw it on the WhatsApp group, and within seconds, people will give them solutions. People will give them access codes. People will give them discount coupons to help them purchase whatever they want to do at a lower cost, and with no expectations of any return.
No, that's a very important point that you mentioned, and yes, I think there's a huge mindset shift that's happened. During our times when we were much younger, and the younger generation now, and it is the era of collaboration actually. And I think in different facets of life, everybody is acknowledging and benefiting from it as well. There are a lot of people sometimes, and a lot of people, not necessarily young people, even in their mid careers or even senior leaders now that I've been coaching a lot of them. I realize there is something called a terminology called imposter syndrome.
Yes.
But that's one part of it. The other part is that a lot of people, as you would be aware, imposter syndrome is probably where, for people who are not familiar with the term, it essentially means that you feel that maybe you're being given more than what you deserve, and are you really worthy of being given what you have been? But that's one part of it. There's also another, and this also stems from, in a way, a lack of self-belief and a lack of confidence somewhere internally. For people who are really dealing with this, and I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of us go through it at certain stages in our life. Nobody's immune to this. What would you really advise or suggest to people who are probably facing such a similar situation, and what can they really do to overcome such a thing?
I go through it even today, honestly, Rohit. I'll admit that, because when I see some of the accolades that I get or the recognition that I get, it does feel unreal. That what have I done, right? And I think it also stems from the fact that today, thanks to social media, we see so many high achievers, or at least people who claim to be having achieved around us, that you start questioning yourself. You question yourself not only whether you have achieved something, but whether you're good enough. Huge component of the imposter syndrome. So the way to get out of it, what I have personally found, is that you've got to continue reiterating to yourself, reminding yourself of your wins in the past. When people like you meet me or say a few nice things about me, somewhere I take in a little bit of that and use it as a positive reinforcement that I must have done something right, that because of which this person is appreciating me or has said these kind words. It's something that one needs to continue reminding oneself of, and also keep a close eye, or keep a realistic eye on one's strengths, because at the end of the day, all of us have our strengths. Yes, we may have our flaws, we may have moments that we are down, but that's not who we are. When you think back, we've gone through life. We discussed some time ago so many challenges, so many pivotal moments, Lehman Brothers, COVID. We've survived all of that. So there's something we've done right. And I think just reminding yourself props you up to make sure that you're up and you don't go down that rabbit hole of sinking and feeling negative or feeling depressed about anything.
Right. No, so, what you've shared makes a lot of sense. And if I can just pick on 2-3 words, summarize them, what you've just shared. One is, you said, self-acknowledgement. We need to keep patting our back also, which a lot of times it's ingrained in us that, we somehow we feel, is it boasting or is it trying to be arrogant? But that's not. For whatever good things that we have done in life, sometimes we need to acknowledge and appreciate ourselves as well. And that's a very valid point, fair point that you've said. And the second point that I understand is that, so you talked about acknowledging or recognizing your own strengths. And when we recognize our own strengths, and pardon me for adding a little bit, 2 cents of my own, positive psychology, which is a science, right? It says that a small effort that you put in, something which is a weak area, will bring about an incremental shift. But the same amount of effort, if it is put in a strength area, it brings about an exponential shift. Yeah. So I think, and this is science, I'm not saying science says this, research has proved this. So from that standpoint, I think it becomes really, really important for us to acknowledge and accept and really work on our strengths. And Sachin Tendulkar did not become Sachin Tendulkar because of working on his weaknesses. It's because he kept honing his strength areas is why he became what he became. And most of the sports persons and athletes and people, who really achieved something really massive. Because we're almost towards the end of the...
Can I just add a note on a lighter note here?
Yes.
So my wife often just jokingly asks me, how much would you rate yourself on looks? And I say 9 on 10.
Wonderful.
So she
Awesome.
she laughs 9 on 10, and I'm like, if I don't love myself, who will?
Absolutely. Such a profound statement. Seems very simple, but it's a very profound statement. And that's the problem which a lot of, when you talk about body shaming, when we talk about a lot of people not being comfortable in the body that they are in, it's about lack of self-love. And I think when you say 9 on 10, amazing. And I would say you are 10 on 10. Why 9?
You're just biased.
You're 10 on 10. Absolutely. Everybody, actually, if you look at it, I think all of us are 10 on 10.
Exactly.
Because the beauty, yes, to a certain extent, society has put in a lot of importance on externally how you look like.
Correct.
But I think more important is the beauty within.
Beautiful.
And I think that's what really drives a person. And if I can, since you've brought this topic, I would just quickly like to share a small story.
Of course.
There's a small boy. He and his father, small boy, they go to a park to just spend some time. The father's taken the boy, and there they see a lot of shopping carts and people, ice cream vendors, and food stalls, and then there's one balloon seller. And that balloon seller, there's this boy wants that helium-filled balloons, which fly up the sky. So he goes and he sees that there is already a lot of rush. So this small little boy, he goes and he tells, Uncle, ye yellow balloon bhi upar jayega kya? And for viewers, I hope you're able to understand Hindi as well. So ye balloon, the balloon seller says, "Haan beta, ye bhi upar jayega." And then he gets back to attending to his customers. Then he just, is amused and he's quiet for a while, a small little boy. And then he again asks, he kind of pats on his leg and he's, Uncle, ye brown balloon bhi upar jayega kya? Hawa mein. तो कहता है हाँ बेटा brown balloon भी जाएगा. And then after a while he's quiet, and then again he goes and he kind of nudges him, uncle ye pink balloon bhi upar jayega. He does it 4-5 times. Now this balloon seller is really annoyed and irritated because he's getting distracted from his selling. And then when he says, finally he tells him, बेटा कलर से फर्क नहीं पड़ता, उसके अंदर क्या भरा है उससे फर्क पड़ता है कि वो सारे ऊपर जाएंगे. Now if you look at the same analogy in terms of us, all of us human beings, it doesn't matter what caste, creed, education, background, society we come from, what looks we have. What matters is what is inside of us, which is going to decide how, how far or how high we will go in our careers or in our lives. So I don't know. I just immediately kind of saw,
lovely story. I'm going to remember it for sure.
Yeah.
Great you shared it.
So with having, firstly, thanks again, Vikas, because it's a lovely, insightful conversation with you. I'm sure viewers also would have taken a lot to, chew over, think over. What would be your final thoughts that you'd like to share before we really wrap up, if at all you have any?
Of course, I think the final thought really is that, Rohit, and especially since you're talking about career journey, my personal journey, I think there are always going to be challenges. There's always going to be ups and downs in life. The idea is to stay resilient, build an support group around you that values you, that loves you, because that's what counts at the end of the day. And you'll find your place. Believe in yourself. God's got a plan for all of us. And I'm sure if you put in the effort, you put in the hard work, remain positive, there's no challenge that we can't overcome.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Before we wrap up, one last question I'd ask. What is your personal or professional aspiration which you think from here on, you've already achieved, you're at a point A. What does that point B look like for you?
The more I think about this, Rohit, I think from a personal standpoint right now, and life is such that as a parent to 2 daughters now, my personal aspirations are more linked to helping them grow, become good human beings, achieve their dreams. So whether it is, taking them for a music class on a Sunday or helping them figure out, my elder one is now looking at going to college in about 2 years. So helping her get the right coaching guidance to figure that path out. Those are the moments which give me fulfillment and joy more than my own personal growth or aspirations. Though, of course, I would love to continue being able to share and grow my, podcasting, my writing, and figure out whatever next I can do. That's a growth journey on its own. Professionally as well, I think what I want to do is continue sharing, adding value to my community through these interventions, and to see that grow so that all of us, like I said, grow together.
Wonderful. Beautifully put. And thank you so much again, Vikas. It was a lovely conversation. I'm sure I really enjoyed. I am sure the viewers will also enjoy. Thank you so much and for coming, and wishing you all the best going forward.
Thank you so much, Rohit. I think you helped me or enabled me to actually open up and share a lot which I haven't done before. So kudos to you for tapping into that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.